If you enjoy this video and would like to hear more of my stories, please click like and subscribe to be notified of when I release a new story. The Bristol Derby is one of the most fierce rivalries with intense hatred that you will find in England. It was also one of the most underrated rivalries, maybe because neither one of the Bristol teams are Premier League. There is no glitz and glam involved, so they are not in the media spotlight. But the hatred between the two teams is as strong as any other rivalry you will find in football. In this video, we look at the history of the Derby game and the clashes that have taken place over the years. The Bristol Derby was deemed 8th fiercest rivalry in English football in an in-depth report by the Football Pools in 2008. The first meeting of what would become a fierce rivalry took place on the 22nd of September 1894, when newly formed Bristol Southend, later to be renamed Bristol City, hosted a friendly match with Bristol Rovers, later Bristol Rovers, at their ground at St John's Lane in Bedminster, in which Bristol Southend, nicknamed the Southerners at the time, perhaps surprisingly, defeated their more established opponents 2-1. After a further number of friendly matches, the teams had their first competitive meeting when they were drawn together in the 1895-96 Gloucestershire Cup. This time Rovers, who had the home advantage at their Ridgeway ground, were the victors with an emphatic 4-0 defeat of Southend, in what was reported to have been a very physical encounter. It was a regular cup tie, and was characterised by very rough play, and an inclination on the part of a number of players to have a few words with their opponents. In fact, on 2 or 3 occasions, the referee had to remind the offenders that it was not a boxing contest. Games between the two teams, like the majority of local derbies in English football, have resulted in a number of football hooliganism incidents. In a match between the clubs in December 1996, pitch invasions by both sets of fans culminated in reports of Rovers players being assaulted by City fans. Some fans of both teams have even been known to avoid attending derby matches because of fears of violence. Let's look at what happened at a more recent clash in the Bristol Derby. As we entered injury time, with City leading 1-0 3/4 of the stadium, rose to celebrate a hard-earned win, at which point, obviously, Rovers scored. The subsequent violence, in which 300 City supporters broke through a line of police and stewards and tried to attack Rovers fans situated in the east end of the ground, has been well documented nationally, as have the attempts of a smaller mob of fans to assault Rovers players after the game. The aftermath of a football crisis rarely lends itself to deep thought or wise counsel, and, as the officials of both Bristol clubs grieved for reputations torn asunder, they proclaimed their belief that this was an incident that could not have been avoided. There had been powers at work beyond the ken of committee men and the local forces of law and order. It was official. The 70s-style football hooligan was back. Scott Davidson, chairman of Bristol City, started the ball rolling. These weren't our real fans, but thugs on a day out to cause trouble. These views were echoed by his opposite number at Bristol Rovers, and had soon been adopted by the local press as their version of the truth. "These were not the City supporters I mingle with every other Saturday," said Tim Davey, Evening Post correspondent and self-styled voice of the fans. David Shattock, Chief Constable of Avon and Somerset, and those in charge of the police operation on the day, declared that they were satisfied that 150 officers on duty had been sufficient for this fixture, but, in their opinion, pre-planned hooliganism on this scale was impossible to police. All of which has made for an open and shut case, with no difficult questions left unanswered, and assurances from all concerned that once the perpetrators of the violence had been identified by video and banned for life, the crowd trouble at City versus Rovers games would start to die away. The result of which, surprise, surprise, is that an opportunity for everyone involved with Bristol football to take stock and absorb the lessons of December 15th may have been lost amidst the noise of feet being dragged and blame being shifted elsewhere. The responsibilities for the events that day don't begin and end with the 300 people that invaded the pitch. Ian Holloway, the Bristol Rovers manager, was the first person to acknowledge that factors other than hooliganism may have been involved when he questioned the role of the local press, that is, the Evening Post, in the way that it had hyped up this fixture. The emotive, at times apocalyptic, 7 days to go use of language, culminating in an 8-page pullout on the Saturday before the game, left readers in no doubt that this was the biggest showdown in years. Moving away from the Bristol derby, we will now look at a witness account from a scared, horrified Bristol Rovers fan, talking about an incident some years ago. This is what he said. Just to point out, first of all, I've been going to City since the mid-70s. Although I've never personally been involved in football hooliganism, I've witnessed, been in the middle of, and on the receiving end of, countless violent incidents both inside and outside football grounds over the years, mostly in the 1980s. In short, I'm not remotely squeamish or judgmental about football violence. Now this evening, while sitting in my local, the Tinto Lounge on Gloucester Road, I observed what has to be among the biggest football-related incidents I personally have ever seen. Dozens of Bristol Rovers fans in running battles with the old Bill. As far as I know, no Lincoln fans were involved, although I obviously don't know this for sure. Gloucester Road was closed completely to traffic for what must have been 45 minutes to an hour. I'd have to say, the scenes reminded me of the TV pictures I watched as a youngster of the St. Paul's riots of 1980 and the miners' strike of 1984. A line of riot police, shields up and truncheons drawn, walked en masse down the Gloucester Road, blocking the entire width of the street, forcing back the Rovers fans while they threw glasses back at them. When I later walked back up Gloucester Road, the tarmac outside the John Cabot pub was like a carpet of broken glass. My only thought at this stage is this: will the Evening Post report this incident? Every City fan knows that whilst we've had a reputation in the distant past, over the last 10 years our hooligan problem has shrunk pretty much to nothing, the odd isolated incident aside. At the same time, Bristol Rovers have developed a pretty notorious hooligan element in their ranks, with numerous serious incidents documented by the Police Football Intelligence Unit in recent years. Rovers fans know this, City fans know this, and yet the Evening Post continues to refer to them as a family club. Last week the Evening Post even reported that Rovers' game against Swindon had been trouble-free, despite the fact that there had been an horrendous attack by baseball bat-wielding Rovers thugs on innocent Swindon fans before the game. Another incident, this time reported in the media outlet Bristol Live, had this to say: dozens of police officers descended upon a pub after a fight broke out between fans following Bristol Rovers' defeat to Oxford United. More than 50 uniformed officers were seen rushing to the Wellington pub at around 5:20 p.m. today, Saturday, October 14th, amid reports of an altercation. A member of staff at the pub off Gloucester Road, who asked not to be named, claimed the incident was prompted by Oxford fans attempting to enter the premises following their side's 1-0 win at the Memorial. After being stopped from entering, the bartender said a fight broke out between fans of both teams before officers intervened. During the commotion, the bartender said they saw a woman punch a police horse and attempt to pull the officer to the ground. Rovers lost 1-0 in the last few minutes of the match, and the Oxford fans came back to the pub after, and it all kicked off, the bartender explained. They were throwing people up against a wall. There was a woman punching a police horse and trying to grab the officer. It's a real shame this has happened, especially when the atmosphere was so relaxed in the pub before kick-off. And a Swindon media outlet had this to say about Bristol Rovers following trouble after a game between the two teams. A gang of 20 hooligans armed with baseball bats attacked Swindon Town fans before the team's crucial match with Bristol Rovers. The unprovoked violence took place at the Inn on the Green Pub in Horfield, Bristol, at about 1:30 p.m. as about 30 Town fans gathered for a friendly pre-match drink before the crunch encounter. Fans caught up in the terrifying ordeal have described the attack as premeditated. Karen Norton, 22 of Wantage, was among the town fans targeted in the pub's beer garden. She said, "We were just sat in the pub garden and all of a sudden these blokes came in with baseball bats and started throwing glasses and bottles at us. It was completely unprovoked, as we were just enjoying a quiet drink. There were even some Rovers fans there who we were getting on with. I got put behind a group of blokes for my own safety, but then a glass only just missed my face. The blokes with the baseball bats were just attacking the Swindon fans. There was blood everywhere. I was just crying my eyes out. I have never seen anything like it in my life." One eyewitness said the gang were contacted via mobile phone by one man, who then singled out the fans that were attacked. Chris Dorey, 33, also from Wantage, said that the yobs crashed through the beer garden's fence to make their escape.
All of which, it seems, was news to the police. Despite an identical attempt to attack the Rovers' end in the corresponding fixture last year, a relatively small number of people were still able to wreak havoc. Little wonder that many Rovers fans feel they did not receive the police protection that a game of this nature demanded. Finally, and most uncomfortably, the violence asks questions of a substantial minority of City supporters for whom this particular fixture has become too important. Down here in the West Country, a lack of footballing success and our geographical distance from any other rivals has created a goldfish bowl effect, in which our results in relation to each other have assumed too great an importance. Expectations for a City fan heightened by a sleeping giant complex, a top-class stadium, and a string of big-name managers are routinely dashed. The presence of Rovers in the same division, and their defeats of our team, a mirror to our own frailties. This has created a situation in which a healthy metropolitan rivalry has, for many of us, been replaced by something akin to hatred. The songs we sing, the chants we make, and the overwhelming importance we attach to our games against the gas has meant that, for some people, violence against Rovers fans was less an abhorrence, more a logical progression. The events of December 15th should serve as a lesson for us all here in Bristol. The media, the police and the fans all helped to create the context in which Rovers fans were attacked. It's not just the hooligans who need to mend their ways. Altogether now, 2 teams in Bristol. This is what the Mail Online had to say about another time the 2 teams from Bristol clashed. More than 50 fans arrested after ugly pitch invasion, which left police officers injured after Bristol derby. 3 officers were injured when rival fans invaded the pitch at the end of the Bristol City Bristol Rovers, Johnston's Paint Trophy tie. The match on September 4th, the first official clash between the 2 City sides since 2007, saw violence and antisocial behaviour inside and outside the ground. Mounted police were needed to clear fans from the Ashton Gate pitch, while officers in riot gear and stewards had to separate fans in the stands. Officers from Avon and Somerset Police carried out dawn raids in Bristol, Bath and Somerset to arrest fans involved in the disorder. 23 arrests were made, bringing the total number of arrests in relation to the match to 50. Chief Inspector Paul Mogg, Silver Commander for the operation, said, "Today's operation sends out a powerful message to a small minority intent on causing problems at football games. You might think you are anonymous in the crowd and no one can see your antisocial behaviour and actions, but think about it next time, because 50 people in our cells had the same thought. We are showing the red card to those intent on causing football disorder and violence in Avon and Somerset, and will now put these people before the courts. Successful convictions should result in football banning orders, which will mean they will no longer be able to attend games or follow their national side abroad." Since the match, investigators have been examining hours of CCTV coverage and mobile phone images to identify who committed offences including public disorder, assaulting police officers and invading the pitch. Photographs of more than 20 people police wanted to speak to in connection with the incidents were published, leading to around half coming forward and further arrests. 30 suspects were arrested before the dawn raids,
which involved officers executing early morning warrants to detain both Bristol City and Bristol Rovers fans who had not handed themselves in. A spokesman for the force said, "Within the first 30 minutes of the operation, 10 people had been arrested, including many well-known hooligans. Additionally, some people we wanted to arrest contacted us to say they would hand themselves in to their local police station. We work closely with Bristol City and Bristol Rovers through our dedicated football liaison officers, as well as colleagues at the UK Football Policing Unit." Already, a 32-year-old man who was arrested during the Bristol City-Bristol Rovers game on September 4th has appeared in court. James Bendel from Bristol admitted throwing a missile and going onto the pitch. He was fined a total of £500 and given a 3-year football banning order. Speaking after the match, City manager Sean O'Driscoll said, "The scenes at the end were disgraceful. It's taking the shine off a good victory for us. That's what people will be talking about, not the game. What's happened is what we didn't want to happen, and the players are all disappointed as well." Thank you for taking the time to watch my video. If you would like to see more, because I have many more stories to tell, then please like this video and click the subscribe logo in the bottom right of this screen. Thanks again, and see you next time.